We'll move on, Keith, and talk about Leicester City because, as you called, Steve Cooper was appointed manager of the club. What are your thoughts on that appointment for them?
I think it's a great appointment for Leicester. As I mentioned, I think Leicester are going to have a very, very tough season in terms of off-the-pitch issues. No matter how well they perform on the pitch, and I wish them luck, they're going to have a tough time with the points deductions, etc. There's going to be a lot of headlines going around it. And I thought Steve Cooper was the right guy to have handled it. He had a baptism of fire at Forest. They were continually in the headlines there for all the wrong reasons and off-the-pitch issues, but he handled it with great aplomb. And so I think he is the right guy to go forward. I think on the pitch as well, he's a very talented manager. He looks refreshed and ready to go. So I think they've definitely made the right choice. I think Graham Potter would have been, while a very talented manager, I don't think he was the right personality for this particular challenge. And I think Steve Cooper's feisty enough to handle it, yet keep the players balanced. He's a good man manager. And I think that he is the right choice and gives Leicester the best possible chance they've got of staying up.
And Graham Potter, Keith, was reportedly demanding higher wages than Cooper as well. Does that, from that financial perspective, is that then a sensible appointment too? And will that have come into consideration when going into looking at both of these managers' sort of credentials?
Managerial wages are not always the biggest, which often surprises people. Surely your manager, if he's the most important person, should be paid the most, but it isn't the case, as I think we all know. And so I don't think it will have been, unless there was a big difference. I mean, whether there was a £5-10 million difference between each request, I don't know. But it would have to be of that sort of scale for it to be material in terms of money. I have made a decision on a manager in previous clubs when it has come down to the commercial ask between two. And so it can factor in your thoughts. And Leicester are going to be on a very tight budget. However, to me, it isn't about the money. As I've said, Steve is the right one for this. And I think he is going to prove to be the right manager for them and see them through the difficult off-pitch situations that they're going to be going through. But it's difficult. I mean, Graham Potter, there's a lot of rumours about him now going to be replacing Gareth Southgate, possibly. That's something that Potter would be very good at, I think. So we'll have to wait and see where this all ends up. But certainly, I think for Leicester's point of view right now, whatever it is, and for whatever reasons, they've made the right decision.
And looking at the points deduction, Keith, do you have an update on that for us, please, potentially? And going into next season, how much of a concern and a reality is it going to be for Leicester fans that they will be facing a points deduction?
I'm afraid there is no update at the moment. It's all been behind closed doors with the lawyers at present, so there is no update. But I've been following it very closely. I'd expect some news on it hopefully next week. So we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be hard. I think there is, without doubt, going to be some sort of points deduction for them, and so they're going to be fighting with one hand tied behind their back right from the start. So the timing of the hearings and when it's actually introduced will be key. They've delayed it themselves through some of their own actions and getting on the front foot. They've obviously lost the point now on appeal of having said that they've cooperated in good faith because they've actually gone against the EFL and the EPL. So they'll have lost that chance on appeal of getting the 2 points that Forest got. So overall, it's going to be a battle for Leicester, but I'm sure they're up for the fight. And unless things change dramatically in the rules, it'll be very difficult to see how they're going to escape. But hey, they're going to give it a good go, I'm sure of that.
And looking on field, Keith, Everton are readying an offer for central midfielder Wilfred Ndidi when his contract expires later this month. What are your thoughts on that for them? And actually, I guess like we discussed in previous weeks, how much of a blow is it going to be to lose the big stars going into this season alongside a potential points deduction as well?
Yeah, look, I think it is a big blow for Leicester. But unfortunately, the position they've got themselves into financially means they're going to have to at least play good boys this season from the Premier League's point of view. And they know they'll have the Premier League all over them in terms of looking at their books and accounts. So they're going to have to balance the books as best they can. I think Ndidi will end up at Everton. I think he'd be a good signing for Everton. I think Leicester may be sorry to see him go, but he's a seasoned, good Premier League player with a good talent. And so it will be a loss for Leicester. He's the sort of player that you'd want in the Premier League team because he understands the Premier League. He's a Premier League quality. But as I say, it's a difficult balancing act. And this is where this PSR is so tough on the clubs coming up. We've said it many times. And it's very difficult to not feel sorry for those clubs that are now having to get through this and having to sell some of their best talent. It just seems wrong when there's clubs like United with £1 billion of debt sitting there. and they're able to pick and choose as they wish to off the try and get the best players. So there's a lot of talking to be done. It's a big debate going on right now, but it'll be down to the clubs as the 20 shareholders to make that decision. And I'm actually still very surprised there hasn't been more movement within the clubs themselves to try and sort out this PSR mess. Somebody's got to take the lead and try and do that.
I mean, the good news for them, Keith, is that Jamie Vardy, Yannick Vestergaard have both signed contract extensions for their top flight return. You know, I mean, I know we've just discussed Ndidi in there, but in terms of players playing every week, Jamie Vardy potentially coming off the bench, how important is it they have players that know the Premier League inside and out, that have that experience going into this season, potentially of turmoil?
It's absolutely crucial. And look, you know, you could be saying that Vardy did have some injury issues last year. Will it be his last dance? Potentially. But certainly, look, they need that experience from both players and others that are going to be there. I'm sure they'd love to bring Wes Morgan back if they could do. But look, it's a tough season, and they need as much experience as possible. Those 0-0s that turn into 1-0 defeats in the last 10 minutes are where those sort of experience really counts. And that's the big difference for those clubs when it's just a 1-goal game. And if you look at the records of the clubs that have gone down over the last 5-6 years, it's all about the number of 1-0s and 2-1s, and that they lose in very narrow games. That's what it's all about, and that's where they've got to try and maintain, with experience, the chance to try and get at least a point out of those games, and that's where it will make a difference.
Keith, do you think, you know, talking of that points deduction, will they be disappointed they couldn't get a fee for Ndidi? And are we expecting more sales potentially out of the King Power Stadium this summer?
Well, it's going to, you know, it's all down to the years left on a contract and all those sort of issues that clubs find themselves in. Of course, we know last year was very compelling for them, that they had to get out of the Championship. And so they'll have made decisions to have kept players and let them run down their contract because they had to get out of the Championship. And then it's almost like, well, we'll shelve that decision until next year. And now that next year has come, and it's come home to roost. It's a difficult position to come up into the Premier League, having had to battle all year in the Championship and perhaps sacrifice, as I say, some of the assets. Because you've let those players run the contract down because you haven't been able to afford to increase the new contract and extend that contract. So it's always a difficult battle. Leicester, hopefully, I mean, they should have some youngsters coming through, but as we all know, that's the difficulty. We just mentioned how experience is so crucial in the Premier League, but they're going to have somebody come up and show up from the younger ranks. Now, what they can try and do in terms of signings themselves, I think, will be limited. They'll be looking at loans. They'll be looking at different things. They'll be doing the best they can. But Steve Cooper is probably giving them the best chance. He knows what he wants, and he'll build a decent squad to compete. That's for sure.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.